Welcome back to Hourglass Podcast, Episode 7. This week I'm going to be slightly deviating from prison content to parole content. Now, this was a very big part of the journey that most people overlook. They think that doing the prison time is the hardest leg of that trip. And while that's true to a very, very large extent, parole can get you put back into prison so quickly if you were not on your P's and Q's, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, watching every single thing that you do with the utmost care and caution, you will be put back into prison without a moment's notice or hesitation. Parole officers do not play around when it comes to leniency and you breaking the law again when you come back out. It can be very, very easy to stay home, but most guys don't shed that persona, that skin that they develop in prison. They want to bring it home with them. A lot of it is pride. There is a certain air that most guys carry with them. It's a chip on the shoulder. And that's not going to get you far when it comes to, you might have to humble yourself a bit around some of these agents because they don't like to see old habits in you. It's part of their job, not just to enforce the fact that you don't break the law, but also to see if there's any signs, if there are any kind of, tells about your personality, about the way that you speak, the way that you act. Like, you can tell if somebody's strung out on drugs. You can tell if somebody comes into the room drinking. I mean, those are automatic violations right there. But there's other things as well. They're going to watch for indicators to see whether or not you are going to stay on the streets or if you need another lap around the sun behind the walls. So parole it's overlooked. So many people, once they get out the door, they believe that that's the end of the journey. Unfortunately, that's not the case. That's another step in getting to the goal of what we call getting off of paper. Because you're still on paper for, it could be a very short amount of time, or it could be a very long, long time. Some guys that I know have had suspended prison sentences. Instead of getting 20 years, they'll get like 4 or 5 years. A shorter sentence, but they'll also say, listen, and this is, the judge will say to them, I'm giving you a break right now, but if you mess up, if you do not walk this chalk line that I'm establishing for you, when you hit the streets in a shorter time than you should be getting, I'm doing this for you. If you mess up, you're going to have a long backup period over top of your head that you're going to have to go back and do. So it can be in the form of a suspended sentence, and a lot of times they'll institute a very long parole period, 5 years or more in some cases. For me, I think I had to do, it was around 4 to 4.5 years of parole is what I had to do, and it was pretty intense. If you've never seen the show before the podcast or watched any of my videos, I got locked up at 21. I was given 21 years when I went to court. I ended up getting some time back later on, so I ended up doing a total of just about 7.5 years, not the 17.5 that I should have done on a mandatory release date. And my sentence was turned from 21 to 12 years. I did 7.5, but I was locked up for armed robberies, handgun charges. These are considered, and they are, violent charges. So when I came home and going to parole, the very first day, the very first thing that I did when I got out, I got picked up, left the jail, was very happy, of course. I went straight to parole and probation. Immediately went there because you have like 2 to 3 days, I believe, tops. I think it might just be 48 hours, or at least it was, to check in and do your initial intake. There's no like, oh, we'll just, honor system, come back and we'll get you logged in at some point. It has to be done pretty freshly, like once you're out that door. So I go in, it was the very first thing I did. I was like, I'm not messing with these people. I'm not giving them any reason to lock me back up. So I go in and I'm sitting in there, and I probably sat for maybe a couple hours in the waiting room before they even called me back. So it was a long process. I think it was somewhere around maybe 4 hours to do an initial intake. And once that was done, I was assigned a parole officer. I was told the guidelines of my parole, the basic, don't do this, don't do that, try to stay out of trouble. If anything comes up, if you ever get arrested or if anything happens, call me immediately. I'm the first person you call. That's what your PO tells you. I actually had really solid POs. They were good. They were very fair. If you messed up, they would knock you back. But if you flew straight, they wouldn't unnecessarily come after you. So I give them credit a lot for being very fair, for being I had good POs. I did. When I got my initial intake done, they told me what sort of parole that I would be on. I was like, what do I have to do? Do I, come in like once a month, or what is it? And they kind of laughed and were like, oh, no, you, because of the nature of your charges and the crimes, you are going to be placed on something that is called the VPI. The Violence Preventative or Prevention Initiative is for people who have violent charges. There's no other way to say it, and that's what I had. And it was a very strict, very, very tight level of parole. The first 6 months, you were in what's known as VPI Level 1. And if you satisfy the requirements of them you can't mess up. If you don't mess up, they'll ease off the leash just a little bit and let you go to what's called VPI 2. VPI 2 is a little bit less, but it's still very strict. It's basically a form of ultra parole. The stipulations are very heavy. For VPI 1, I had to come in to the office and do 2 in-person check-ins at the courthouse each week. I had to go in twice. Twice I had to give them urine samples. I also had a job site or in the field visit where they would come and see if I was working. And so I had to call them also on one of the days. So I basically had 4 contacts, twice in the office, once at my job, and once I would call them out of 5 business days of the week. And 2 of those times I would have to give urine tests. And this was every week. So that's quite a lot. They're really trying to make sure that you're not out there doing anything wrong. You always have, that guiding rod in front of you. They're just like, hey, listen, we're going to be on you no matter what. But it'll get better if you can prove to us that you can remain on the streets and follow basic rules. A lot of guys couldn't do it. They could not get through VPI. VPI was intense, and it was strenuous for me because I was also working 40 hours a week, and on top of that, I had started to take college courses. As soon as I came home, and right in the peak of summertime, and a month later, I'd used a Pell Grant because I could go to college for free, being a felon, which is crazy, but I said I'm going to take advantage of this. So I went back to college, and I started just getting all my generals and stuff out of the way. And, I felt kind of old in there. I was like, man, I'm 29 years old at this point, and everybody else in here is like 18, 19, and I felt like a fossil. Combine that with the fact that I'm working 40 hours a week. I was taking a full load in school and doing this VPI thing. I didn't have much time for anything else. I really didn't have time to break law. If I was doing that, it would have, I don't know what kind of superhuman energy I would have had to possess to be able to do the things I was doing and also find time to step back into my old habits. So VPI for me it kept me busy, but it was also a blessing as well. It was unwanted training wheels for integration back into society. That's, in a nutshell, what it was. So it was very difficult. I would work the hours that I could. I had 2 full days that I would go to school, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I would work later Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I would go work long day Saturday. My job afforded me the opportunity to do that. They're like, yes, you can go make your hours up. Sunday was the only day I didn't do anything. I would actually get up, go to church, and I'd come back and I would just like write papers. I would write papers. I would try to get some rest. That would be the day I'd reward myself for getting through the week. Similarly to in prison, every week I'd make a real nice hookup on Friday night. It was my gift to myself for not getting locked back up or thrown on the hammer. Lockup, there is jail within jail. For not having that happen, I'd reward myself. So I kind of carried that same, what would you call it? Like a delayed gratification. That's the word I'm looking for. Delayed gratification. I would just put my nose to the grindstone all week, go to school, work hard, come back, not break law, not do anything stupid. I stayed clean. I wasn't getting high or doing anything like that. Was not jeopardizing my freedom. So every Sunday, like I said, I get up, do my thing, relax around the house, drink coffee upstairs, which that was a big thing for me because I just wanted to be able to make my own coffee in prison. And we had all this instant stuff for years. This was one of the first things I bought. I came home, went right to the store and bought a coffee pot. And I was constantly brewing. Matter of fact, I'm drinking some right now because it's late. But the little rewards that I would give myself, it was like a little carrot on the end of a stick. I didn't have a lot of money because I'm paying my parole fees as well. Most guys didn't do that, and then they would have to fight them off in court later on. So I made sure I paid them. I gave them their money, and they were surprised. They were like, most people don't pay us. And I was like, I don't want to see you again. Here's your money. So I saved my money, went to school, did parole, worked 40 hours. And on Sunday, I would get myself a cheesesteak from one of the local places that I loved and missed. And that was it. That's what I would do. So once I graduated VPI level 1 without incident, I was like, okay, cool. Thank goodness. It'll slow down a little bit. And it did. I can't remember. I'm having trouble 100% remembering how much they backed it off. I think I still had to do 2 urines a week. I only had to come in once to the office, 1 phone call, and they would come to the job site. So it was like 1 less in-office visit, which was nice. I didn't have to drive downtown, take all the metal out of my pockets, take my belt off, etc., go through, the metal detector in the courthouse, go in, sit in line, sign in, wait to get seen. It was just such a long hassle and a process. It just ate into my time. But such is what happens when you decide to break the law, become a felon, and go to prison. These are things you got to deal with. So VPI 2 was a little bit easier. Not much, but some. Once I got to the end of that, I did have one scare. I had one scare which, because I kept myself out of trouble and I flew straight and they knew I was a straight shooter and I wasn't messing with anything or doing anything wrong, there was 1 urine. They called me up and they're like, hey, it was like inconclusive. What's going on with it? And I was like, hold up, what do you mean? And I got spooked. I was like, they're going to come lock me up. And I was like, I haven't done anything. And my PO, she was really cool. She goes, listen, it just kind of, there were some inconsistencies in it. And I said, well, what do you mean? She goes, it looks like it was like diluted or something. I said, hold up. This was that day when it was like some 90-something degree day, and I was working on a roof outside on a construction job in the middle of summer. I mean, it was treacherously hot. So I'm just pounding water all day long. And I was like, you know how many gallons of water I drank today? And she goes, you know what? That's probably it. It just looks like it's diluted because all the water you've been drinking. And it was record heat. And so we actually talked it out on the phone. And she was like, you're right. I'm not worried about it. I was like, listen, I'll come in and give you another one if you want. I don't want any problems. And she goes, no, don't worry about it. What you're saying makes sense. I remember how hot it was that day. You're good. But it spooked me. I was definitely worried about getting violated for for working on a roof and drinking too much water. So I was real careful after that. I was like, man, I might have to incorporate some Gatorades or maybe some salt or something like that because it was just straight water that came out. Looks diluted in the test. You can get dinged for it. So anyway, that was the only real scare that I had. So I ended up satisfying VPI level 2 also, which was cool. And at that point, it turned into come in once a week. And I think I was on random urines at that point. So it dialed back significantly for me. And a lot of people are like, man, I only come in once a month. That must suck to have to come in every week. And I'm like, dude, I explained what VPI was to some of these guys in the waiting room. And they're like, whoa, you had to do all that? I said, yeah. They're like, you have time for anything else? I said, work. They're like, man, I'm surprised. I was like, and school. They're like, what? You did all that? I said, man, I'm trying to stay busy, dude. And a lot of guys, they just want to be lazy and not do anything. They just wanted, I can't get a job. And it's like, nah, man. Honestly, a lot of guys just put a lot of excuses out there. And sometimes you can't. But you can also tell when somebody's being a total bluffing McMuffin too, not doing anything to try to better themselves. So I avoided them guys for the most part. I didn't talk to hardly anybody in parole and probation. There's a few people that I crossed paths with that I was locked up with them. And of all those ones, like 2 of them I ended up actually still talking to. So I get off of VPI 1, graduate it. Then I go to VPI level 2, and I get through that level of parole as well. Get onto a regular parole schedule. And it's like weekly visit, weekly urine. Just do them both at the same time. And if they call me, I pick the phone up. So I get through that. And at this point, I'd done VPI, and I was dialed back on my requirements to come in. And it was one day, I was at work, and my phone rings, and I look down, and I was like, whoa, why is this person calling me? The person that was calling my phone was the head of our local parole and probation office, somebody I don't speak to, but I have all their numbers in my phone just in case, because I'm like, I'm going to answer any of these calls. There was like a sheet in there that had all the numbers and contacts. I would just put them all in my phone in case they called me. I'm like, hey, what's up? Trying to stay free, trying to stay out. So this is the head of the office, and I'm like, oh, this cannot be good. This person has never called me before. So I pick the phone up, I answer. I'm like, hello. I'm like, hey, is this such and such? Yeah, yes, sir. What's going on? So, well, I wanted to talk to you if you got a minute. And I was like, oh no, like my stomach started to just churn. I could feel it tightening up. I'm stressed out. I'm starting to kind of get a little bit lightheaded. I'm like, dude, I didn't do anything. Is this another false urine? I'm like, man, I swear I haven't done anything. This is all running through my mind. And I said, yeah, sure. Do you need me to come in? And he was like, no, we can talk on the phone. I'm just like, oh, all right. Well, what's on your mind? And the guy says to me, he goes, so about VPI. And I'm thinking, oh no, there's probably a level 3. Now I got to go do this some more. Proceeds to tell me that I'm the only person in the state of Maryland, because this is a new program, this VPI initiative. I was the only person at the time who satisfied VPI level 1 and level 2 without any incident and legit graduated off of this. I was like, oh, okay, the only person in town. He was like, no, the only person in the state of Maryland who has gotten off of this without incident first time through. And I was like, okay. He's like, is it true you've been working and going to school as well? I said, oh yeah, absolutely. He's like, That's fantastic. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Maybe they're going to shorten my parole is what I'm hoping for. Unfortunately, that was not the case. The next thing that this man asked me blew my mind. He says to me, would you be willing to come and speak at a DPSCS meeting, Department of Public Safety and Correctional Service? It's people that work at the jails, probation officers, some prison guards, case management workers, etc. It's like the social worker type aspect of prison. And I was just like, oh yeah, absolutely. I would love to. I'm sitting here thinking, if I can do something for this guy and I got a favor from the head of parole and probation, that's going to put me in good standing. If something ever comes up, and here I am saying, of course, you're asking me to come speak at this thing, and you're asking me to do it, I would be honored to. Yes, sir. Send me the details, and I'd be more than happy. So we set this thing up, and he lets me know it's at like the local library. And he goes, I want you to speak at the end. I want you to tell them, what you've done to stay out of prison and what you've done to satisfy BPI. Tell them about school, tell them about work. I was like, okay, sure thing. He goes, but do me a favor. When you get there, don't let anybody know that you're on parole or that you're going to be speaking. Kind of keep it hush. I was like, all right, that's cool. Excuse me. So I get to this meeting and I go downstairs and I got my little, shirt and tie on and I'm trying to blend in and I'm just sitting in the back and everybody's like, oh, hey, how are you? And I'm like, hi, I don't know any of these people. And I'm just sitting in the back and I sit through this whole meeting, Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, and they're talking about issues that they're dealing with, how inmates are no good. No, like I'm hearing all this stuff that these guys never get to hear. I'm like behind the veil, behind the curtain, hearing some information that I never thought I'd be privy to. As I'm listening to it, I'm like, I see what he's doing. He wants to flip the script on these guys and have me get up and speak at the end and show them that there is potential. There is hope for people if they decide, if they really, really want to, and what those steps might be so that we can possibly replicate these results, reduce recidivism, which is just, people returning back to prison. The recidivism rates are high across the country. On local levels, on state levels, on federal levels, they're very high. And it's been an issue that is talked about in so many circles, these think tank type groups, these departmental meetings, these higher ups in Bureau of Prisons, etc. They do not know how to curb the want or the innate natural desire for people to put themselves back in a prison cell. So my situation stuck out to this gentleman, and he wanted me to come in and highlight the opposite of everything that they're talking about, which was cool. And I thought it was a great mind trick that he pulled by doing that. Don't tell anybody who you are. At the very end, he goes, I want to invite such and such up here to come up and speak. And right before I came up, he was like, he's currently graduated the VPI 1 and 2 in the state of Maryland. He's the only person to do so. You could feel the wind just be sucked up into everybody like this. Like, I'm telling you, man, the atmosphere was like, one of them's in here. One of them's been in here listening the whole time. An inmate's been in here the whole time. And I walk up, and I've got my little shirt and tie on, and, I'm not like, haha, or smarmy or goofy. I was very gracious about it, and I was like, good afternoon, my name is such and such, and thank you, sir, for inviting me to come in here and speak today. And I just went into what I had done, and what I didn't do. Talked to him about the need to stay busy, but not overly busy, the need to fill your time with the right activities, not pointless things, and that you have to want it enough. And if you get the right help, which is very important. You have to get help from people. You have to get help from people, or you're probably not going to succeed fully. I had a very good support system. A lot of people do not have that. And we talked about the need to introduce something along those lines to help people who do want to better themselves. But long story short, I talked to them about the ins and outs of what I've been doing, school, work, etc. At the end of the meeting, when I got finished speaking, there was a silence and a brief pause, and then everybody started to clap. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. They got up and, hey, man, that was fantastic. We need more of this. This is something that we would love to be able to see more people do. And everybody was coming up to me, and they were just like, dude, thank you so much. And I was like, yeah, of course. And I remember the day because many of the people in the room asked me to come and speak at their events at that time forward. They're like, hey, can you please come and talk to this school? I would like for you to come talk to this organization. We want you to go speak to these guys in this jail. And I'm like, I would love to. Probably like 10 people. So I give them my contact information, email, phone number, all that, thinking that they're actually going to want me to go and speak at these events. Not one person got in touch with me. This has been over 12 years ago. Not one person got in touch with me of the 10 people that wanted me to come and speak at these events. I cannot tell you the level of frustration that I experienced from government officials who claim that they want to stop recidivism. They want people to stay out. They want to do these things. And then as soon as you show them that there is a potential, pathway to accomplish this, and you try to be involved and help them, and then there's crickets. And it would be one thing if the system was getting better, but it's not. It's not getting better. It's the same or worse. People go to jail, they stay in, it becomes a revolving door, it's a vicious cycle. It's the Mobius strip of prison, the infinite loop that just continues to work around itself. I was so upset, and I still am a little bit upset about it, that they've not ever reached out. I'm like, what you're doing is not working. I might not be the thing or the model for everybody, but I'm sure that it could help some people. I've been home for 14 years. I've had one speeding ticket, and that was it, and nothing else since then. I've had no issues, no problems whatsoever. I pay my taxes, I vote, I work, I bought a house. It's like you can do better if you choose to do so, but if you don't tell anybody how to do it, they're not going to have any opportunities to get better. There's no pathway for them to follow. They're not setting anything up within the prison systems. All they're saying is, don't get in trouble, and if we catch you with a dirty urine, we're going to lock you back up. There's not a lot of resources that actually help people, it's just so frustrating. And it bothers me even more because of the contrast that I noticed when the particular individual who was running Parole and Probation saw it. And he said, this is good. This is what we could use more of. But the lack of follow through, it just utterly deflated me in having any hopes that the system will work itself out, that the system will iron itself out. It'll just all shake out in the wash. I'm sorry, but that has not happened, and it is not happening. It's going to require intentionality. It's going to require a concerted effort among citizens and leaders in the community to get together if there's going to be a reduction in crime, and not just a reduction in crime, but for people to be restored back to living in a way that they should have been living pre-incarceration. So my level of frustrations with that have obviously still remained. Even last year I went and spoke at an event, and it was good. Spoke to 4 different groups of 200 people. It was like a breakout session thing when they came around, and when I had an opportunity to speak, It wasn't very long, but when I did, several people come up to me. Oh man, we would love for you to come in and speak at our event. Oh, you need to go back into the jails and talk to them. I'm like, I can't. No one will get me in. They're like, oh, I can get you in. I work there. I know the warden. And I'm like, okay, here's my information. Please call me. I would be more than willing to do so. And still, one person from that event, one person, God bless her, she actually got in touch with me and was like, hey, I've been trying to get you to come in and speak at this event, which I did back 2 months ago, and I think it went well. But for the most part, it's like, if what you're doing is working so well, why would you ask me to come speak? And if you know that it's not working, why wouldn't you follow through and get somebody who's walked that path to come in and show the other guys how they can do it too? And I was speaking with a family member recently about this, but it's almost like if you speak to a room of 100 people, maybe 10 will listen to you. And of those 10, hopefully 2 or 3 will actually follow through on it. So it requires a persistent pattern of public persuasion to change. To change not just people, but the system. Of that 100 people, if 3 start to do it, that's a very small number. But if those 3 were to go out and say, hey, you know what, now I've removed myself from that sample size of 100 idiots, now it's down to 97 because I've removed myself and I'm no longer one of those people who is a slave to the cycle. If those people go out and do the same thing, that sample size will continue to shrink over time. And after a certain point, you will hit what is known as a tipping point towards the positive direction. If this is done properly, we can actually start to change our streets. I'm very passionate about recidivism, the causes of it, the cures to it, and how we can implement this stuff as just regular everyday people. You know, you don't have to stop working your job and go start a coalition or some kind of group or tax exempt NGO or whatever it is. You can work your day job and go speak to people on the side. You know, just do this, volunteer here and there. The change will come. It absolutely will come. I'm proof of it. I was, like I said, locked up 21 years. Got very blessed. Didn't have to do all that time. Came home. And I did what I was supposed to do. I love this phrase I'm about to hit you with because it sums up the journey relatively simply. Sometimes you do what you have to so that you can do what you want to. There's a lot of things I wanted to do that I couldn't do. I had to delay gratification so that I could step into the next thing. So, it can happen. Will it happen organically and naturally? No, change will not. But if you get a few people, and those few people get a few people, and they continue to do that, your chances of catching the right person, changing their mind, and making that somebody a positive impact, not just on the community, but on their own families, that says a lot. So there is a lot to be learned from case studies, etc. There's a lot of information that will point to things that could reduce recidivism. And it's different for every place. Some people, you're just not going to reach them. It's an unfortunate fact, but doesn't mean we shouldn't try. So there are positives to glean from these situations, and I would like to see it on a much larger level than it currently is. I would like to see some people who actually care in power, like legitimately care, and will put their money where their mouth is and say, hey, let's try something different because what we're doing is not working. The United States does not have to be a revolving door prison country, which it currently is. It's not good. We're creating monsters for the most part, and then we're putting them back on the streets. And they're taking these cultural habits to their families, and their families are perpetuating the same vicious cycle. Doesn't need to happen, and I'm hoping that through this podcast, I really, really feel passionately about this. I'm hoping that it catches the right ears, and that a few people say, hey, you know what? Will you come and speak at our thing? Or at least call us and we'll talk and brainstorm and come up with some ideas, some things that we can do to implement some sort of positive change, because everything else just isn't working. I don't feel like things are getting brighter in this country, and a big part of it would have to do with, criminal culture. There is a culture behind it. It's not just like, oh, well, I broke the law and, that's what everybody does. It's not. It's become a mindset, and it's pervasive. It's not good. So I am really hoping that this one catches the right ears, and if anybody does want me to ever come and speak, I am still making myself available. I've been home for a long time. I've stayed out of trouble. You can succeed. You do not have to stay where you were. So if this is something that sounds like you would like me to come and talk at an event, I am more than willing to do it if I can line it up and I don't have to go too far or whatever. It could all be worked out. But the thing is, contact me. Look at my email. It's on my YouTube page. Go on and look on there and then just shoot me an email if you're serious about talking about reducing recidivism in your area. I'd be more than happy to share my tips, some of the techniques and tactics that I have used and that have successfully proven themselves over several years. It's not a fluke when it's almost 15 years. So, thank you for sticking around. I know this was a bit of a long one. I had to edit it here somewhere. There might be a weird splice because my cat wanted to come in and just start screaming at me. But yeah, anyway, I appreciate you sticking around. It's Lockup Legends and Lessons. Check me out on YouTube, on Spotify, TikTok, Instagram. I'm out there. Thank you so much for everybody who likes and subscribes. I really appreciate you. The wise man doesn't get himself into what the smart man has to get himself out of.